You could take my sermon and you could reduce it to 9 words. So I have a 9-word sermon for you this morning. Thought at the beginning of the year, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple. And so I'm going to give you 9 words. Now, I reserve the right to fill in around those words. But if you can remember these 9 words, I think will help get you on track if you're off track, keep you on track if you are on track, and help you pursue and live out a meaningful life. Before we get to those 9 words, I want to show you some pictures, and these pictures will help us get to the first 2 words. Anyone know who that is? Scalia. What was he? Supreme Court Justice. Yes, he was, and a good one at that. Carrie Fisher, or better known as Princess Leia, absolutely. Fidel Castro. Hero, humanitarian to Hollywood. The rest of the world that's got 2 eyes. A jerk. He's evil. Muhammad Ali. How many of you ever saw Muhammad Ali actually box, a live boxing? Yeah, a couple of you here, great. I never got to. You saw Piece of History, pretty cool. Nancy Reagan. Prince. I actually met Prince, one of the low points of my career. I was doing security at the Gorge, and I had to do stage security for him. It was horrible. There you go. Greta Zimmerman. You know who she was? You didn't until just now, did you? That's Greta Zimmerman. Now, the story behind that, pretty cool story. You know where that picture was taken, right? Times Square, New York, right at the end of World War II. The guy in the picture was out in the streets with everyone else in New York at the time, celebrating the end of World War II, and he was out on the street with his girlfriend, who wasn't Greta Zimmerman. And he runs into Greta Zimmerman, and he does that, okay? And then the Times photographer, boom, takes a picture and it becomes just this massively iconic picture encapsulating the celebration of the end of World War II. And he went on to marry his girlfriend, which is beyond me, because if I was out on a walk with Sharon at at Bell Square when we were engaged and kissed a random stranger, I'm guessing our engagement would be in danger. And so, but he married his gal, and she married her guy, and they actually recreated that photo 60 years later. Pretty crazy. Greta Zimmerman. Merle Haggard. Any Merle Haggard fans in the house? Be honest. That's right. The same folks that raise their hands from Muhammad Ali, I noticed. Arnold Palmer. Great golfer, great drink, too. I will say that. John Glenn. Now, it's obvious, but I'll ask the question, what do all of those people have in common? They're dead. They're dead. They're gone. They're done. Their race is over. Their time on earth has come to an end, and they all have seen something you haven't seen. The judgment seat of Christ. It's a sobering thing to reflect on lives that have passed. Some lives lived well. Some lives lived oppressing other people. Some lives given to entertaining others. Some lives given to pursuing their passion. But all of those names we recognize and we know because either pop culture or history or politics or whatever, we've been made aware of their lives. But what they have in common is that they are all dead, which leads us to our first 2 words of the 9 words you need to remember this year, and that is, let's turn this on, that life's short. Now, I know for some of you out here, you're going to say, well, that's really 3 words, Pastor Josh. Well, thank you, Einstein. I know it's 3 words, but we're going to call it 2 words because I want to keep it under 10. So life's short. We're going to call it 2 words. Life's short. In James chapter 4, if you have your Bible, you want to turn there. In James chapter 4, we don't need pictures of history to realize this truth. James tells us it in James chapter 4. In James chapter 4, verse 13, he says, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. What's the point James is trying to make? The point James is trying to make is that life's short. one of the oldest living women in the world, was interviewed a few years ago. I think she's 104 or 106, something like that. And she said, "What stands out to you about the life you lived?" And she immediately replied, "It feels really short." Now, she'd seen a lot of history and a lot of life. And what was her response to what's it been like to be with the oldest living woman in the world? It seems really short. How many of you can tell me with accurate precision what will happen around the world tomorrow? None of you. How many of you with accurate precision can tell me what will happen in your life today? None of you. How many of you even are sure, with absolute surety, that you will make it through the rest of this sermon? None of you. Because life's uncertain and life is short. And so every year, one of the things that I do is I get on Time Magazine or CBS or MSNBC, heaven forbid, or CNN or somewhere, and I'll look at pictures of people who have passed away. Not out of some morbid sense of, oh, look, they're dead, but from a sense of I need to be woken up again to the fact that my picture and my name will be on that wall someday. Well, it won't, because nobody will care when I die. But you know the point I'm making, right? Like at some point, my picture will hang on a wall somewhere in someone's house and be like, "Oh yeah, there's Josh. Yeah, he's dead. I will die. You will die." Sharon and I talked about this week. So, how the conversation, would you marry someone else if I died? That whole conversation spouses have. Tell me you have that. Have you had that conversation? Josh, come on, be honest here. You've never had that? Well, maybe it's me and Sharon. It was like, will you marry someone else if I died? And everyone's quiet, how do I answer this? They're like, well, I don't know. Well, it's okay with me if you do. Well, I don't want to. Why not? And my answer is always like, when you've had filet mignon, who wants hamburger? You know what I mean? And then that typically goes well. And so, but I'm like, I don't know. I'd be a train wreck without you. I didn't want to think about it. But when you've been to Mount Everest, who wants to? It's like, come on, this is awesome. But we talked this Christmas about life and death because our family had this experience that kind of woke us up to that. Many of you heard that on our Facebook Live story. But Carrie and Tara come back from Seattle on Stevens Pass, and guy slides across the center lane. Carrie tries to avoid him and can't. Boom, head-on collision, and airbags go off and spin around and come to a stop. It can't see out. Don't know if they're in the middle of the road or on the side of the road waiting for the, and they're all trying to get out. And the guy knocks on the door. "Hey, can I help you?" And a former Marine helping them out there. But you look at the car and you're like, man, they shouldn't have walked away from that. Somebody should have died there. And yet all six of Carrie's precious family, including himself, walked away from that accident. And for us, we got the news that day right before the Christmas Eve service, and Adam went over to the house to get Carrie's things so he could read it for Carrie. He was supposed to be here that night, and Adam was telling me details I hadn't even heard yet while I'm sitting at the piano doing last rehearsal before you guys show up for our Christmas Eve service. And my hands are shaking because I'm like, holy smokes, I could be planning my brother and sister-in-law's funeral this weekend. And it just woke us up to the reality again that life is fragile, life is short. Now, life's always been short. Life's always been precious. Life's always been fragile. That didn't all of a sudden change when they got in the accident. We just were made aware of that again in a whole new way. Life has always been short, always precious, always uncertain, always fragile. But we go through life sometimes completely unaware that that's a reality. And then death takes us off guard. And one other thing that's healthy for the soul, not in a morbid sense, but in a sense of I want to prepare to live fully while I'm here, is to remember that life is short. And so when James says, look, you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. He's saying don't live with this humanistic sense of pride, arrogance, confidence, saying, oh yeah, that's going to happen tomorrow for sure. I'll meet you there. I'll be there. You don't know if you're going to be there or not. You might be dead because life is short. Second thing to keep in mind as we go into the new year, Jesus reigns. Life's short, Jesus reigns. Look how James says it. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. What's James saying? He's saying, look, if you're going to make plans, that's awesome. Go for it. Just remember that Jesus reigns. Those who make plans without God at the center are fools. Jesus reigns. You will not take one breath less than God has ordained for you. And that's comforting. You will not take one breath more than God has ordained for you. And that should be humbling. The people of God should always be living in the felt reality that life's short in light of eternity. And Jesus reigns, so I can take comfort and walk in humility, not arrogance. One of the many downsides of Western civilization's philosophy post-Enlightenment is that it's a worldview with no eternity in it. It's a worldview with no eternity. So you live for the here and the now. Get what you can, while you can, however you can. If it's money you want, get it. If it's sex you want, get it. If it's power you want, get it. Whatever you want, get it, because this is all there is. When there is no eternity, you live a certain way. It's an anxious way, it's a toiling way, it's a reckless way, and it's a hopeless way. But when you're living now in light of eternity that will be spent enjoying relationship with the Father and the riches of your inheritance as being a son of God, it changes what you need now and how you live now. For those outside of Christ who have no hope of eternity, earth is as close to heaven as they will get. For those who are in Christ, who have the hope of spending eternity with the Father, earth is as close to hell as they will ever get. Meaning we don't have to work and toil and be anxious about building a heaven here. We can give and serve and be sacrificial in how we live because we have a heaven being prepared for us by our good Father that's waiting for us as our guaranteed inheritance and future. So life's short, yes. Jesus reigns, yes. So what does this mean then? Well, number 3, make plans. Life's short. Jesus reigns. Make plans. Well, if Jesus reigns, why should I make plans? Look what James says. Verse 13, now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this city or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist or a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. What's he saying in verse 15? He's not saying, hey, because your life's a vapor and Jesus is in control, you shouldn't make any plans. He's simply saying, hey, when you make your plans in light of the reality that life is short and Jesus reigns. So don't not make plans, simply make plans in the right way. Oftentimes people say, well, if God's in control, why should I make plans? Because he tells you to. Oftentimes there's a misunderstanding. Well, if God's sovereign, I should just, que sera, sera. What will be, will be. No, not at all. And there's several verses I like to go to every year to remind me of this, and I share them with you often, and I'll share them with you here again. You go to the book of Proverbs, and we come to Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 and 7. Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her food in summer and gathers her sustenance in harvest. What's he saying? He's saying, if you want to learn something stupid, go look at the ant. No boss, no chief, nobody yelling at him, telling him what to do, nobody, holding their hand and walking them across the street. All on their own, they stop and they go, let me consider the future. In my future, if the Lord tarries and I live, is something that we call winter, where food is hard to get. If I want to survive the winter, I need to start preparing now for that future event. Meaning the ant considers the future, and in considering the future, they determine and change how they live in the present. The Bible is saying, the fool lives only in the present. The wise considers the future and then changes how they live in the present in preparation for the future. And there's different kinds of future. There's the tomorrow future. There's the next month future. There's the next year future. And then there's the eternal future. So you should be planning for next month, and you should be planning for next year, and you should be planning for 10 years from now, and you should be planning for retirement years, and you should also be planning for the day that you will have when you stand before Jesus, like all those people have already had who we saw on the screen a few minutes ago. You want to look toward that day, the last day, and you want the last day to inform how you live in these days. Otherwise, you're foolish. Or Proverbs 15:22. Without counsel, plans go wrong. But with many advisors, plans succeed. In this verse, the writer of the Proverbs is just assuming that plans are good to make, and now he's telling us how to make plans. You make plans with counsel. Don't think you see everything. Don't think you know everything. Don't think you understand everything. So make your plans as best as you can from the vantage point you have, and then ask godly men and women to speak into it. Men and women who are intelligent, men and women who are wise, men and women who know you well, and men and women who are on the same trail that you're on, just further down. To make plans on your own without the input of others is to be a fool. Or Proverbs 16:3, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. Again, the author of the Proverbs here is assuming that you should be making plans, and he's telling you now how to do plans. You should make plans that include the counsel of godly men and women, and you should make plans that include God. Meaning, don't build your plans over here and then sprinkle a little God on top. Understand and behold and comprehend the reality of God, and then build your plans around the reality of Jesus so that your life is centered on the person and the work of Jesus, not centered on yourself, and sprinkle a little Jesus in, ask him to help bless your life. Or Proverbs 31. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and tasks for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it with the fruit of her hands. She plants a vineyard. Of course, this is talking about the wise, godly woman of Proverbs 31. And anyone who's been in leadership, anyone who's led anything, instantly recognizes by those words that a wise woman doing those things is a woman who plans. Because you don't just roll out of bed and provide food for your household. You don't just roll out of bed and provide tasks for all of your employees. You don't just roll out of bed and buy some random piece of property without carefully considering the return on investment. You don't roll out of bed and plant vineyards that grow anything for a market that's rolling. Those all require foresight and forethought and planning. And Proverbs is saying the wise woman is the woman who does those things. So when James says, hey, wake up, life's short, Jesus reigns, he's not saying, so just kick back and get what you can while you can. He's saying, in light of those things, make a plan. Make a plan. And so my exhortation to you at the beginning of 2017 is that, hey, remember, life's short. This may be the last sermon you hear. You may not see 2018. This may be all you have. Life's short. Live in light of that reality. And then take comfort in the fact that Jesus reigns. So make a plan. Make a plan. Lastly, James 4:17. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. Crazy verse. If anyone knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them. I said I got 9 words for you. Life's short. Jesus reigns. Make a plan, right? Last 3. Do what matters. Do what matters. It's not enough to just make a plan. You need to make a plan for you to do what matters most. There's lots of things you could spend your time doing, and there's lots of plans you could make that have nothing to do with Jesus at the center or fulfilling the calling he's given you in your life. What James is saying is so fascinating, because we oftentimes think of sin in terms of me committing an evil, which is true. So the sin of commission, right? Don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie, don't murder, don't commit adultery. And when you do those things, you're actively committing a sin. But there's also called the sins of omission, meaning not doing things you should be doing. Both are equally sinful. Both are equally wrong in the sight of God. Both can be equally devastating when you do things you should not do and when you do not do things that you should do. Very, very few pastors, in fact, I don't know a pastor who's ever been fired for sins of omission. Ignoring their wife, ignoring their children, ignoring their soul. We fire them for sins of commission, adultery, putting their hand in the pot, not growing the church, or preaching the wrong things. We never fire pastors for sin of omission. Very, very rarely will you get in trouble with anybody for sins of omission, and they're just as deadly. What are those things that God has called you to do that are unique and personal to you? That if you were not to do them, it would be as if you were sinning against God. A few questions to help you get some clarity on doing what matters most. Because I want us as a church family, individually and collectively, to be living lives that matter in light of eternity, under the ruling, reigning, sovereign, glorious hand of God, living lives with intention and purpose. Not hair on fire, panicking, living for the moment because I might not have tomorrow, but living a measured, intentional life that's going somewhere, that's doing something, that's zeroed in on what matters most, and then making room to make sure that our lives are investing in those things. So here's some questions I ask myself, and I just want to offer them to you. And I would encourage you to make some time. Maybe you've already done these things, but if you haven't, to make some time this week or next week to sit down with your spouse or a friend if you're not married, or someone in your gospel community or someone in your DNA, and to work through these questions personally, and then invite some counsel and feedback on these questions, because I guarantee you these 9 questions that I'm going to give you will help give you perspective on the reality of life being short, Jesus reigning, making plans and doing things that matter. 4 questions looking back. Number 1, it should say, I wrote it this morning, it should be 2016. When I wrote it last night, I was in 2015 or 16, so I was, you get what I was saying. What happened in 2016, it should say. What happened in 2016? If you take some time to stop and reflect, I bet you'll be shocked at how much water went over the dam of your life. One of the ways I do this is I get on my phone or I get on my computer and I just walk through pictures. I go back to January 2016 and I start walking through pictures, and it's like, oh my goodness, I forgot about that. And that happened this year, crazy. Oh my goodness, that was crazy. That was terrible. That was horrible. That was wonderful. That was amazing. And I just kind of existentially experienced the year condensed in about a 30-minute experience. And it's amazing the things that happened probably this year that you completely forgot about. Because we just don't have the capacity to remember every moment, but pictures are an incredible tool. Here's why you do that. Because once you've done that, you then ask the next question: how is God good or kind to me? Because the reality of it is that God has been good and kind to us, because that's just who He is. He's a good Father. He's a kind Father. He's a loving Father. He's a gentle Father. He's a patient Father. He's a perfectly righteous Father, meaning He is better than even the best Father we can imagine could be, meaning He gave us good gifts this year. Did we see them? Oftentimes we're like all my 2-year-olds. Did you know not one of my 2-year-olds gave me a deep, heartfelt thanks for keeping them alive for 2 years? You notice that if you have kids, you do so much for them as parents, they don't ever thank you for. You go to a job, you save, you budget, you buy food for them, you feed them, you keep them warm in the winter, you get up when they're throwing up at night, and you try to put a little, actually you elbow your wife, and you're like, hey, they're throwing up. And you're up, and they're throwing up in the thing, and they're throwing up all over your thing, and it's like, man, this is you. And then, like, not once are they like, Father, thank you so much for the sacrifices you make to keep me alive as a 24-month-old. No, never once. They just expect it to happen, right? And if you think about it, as a parent, you've done 10,000 things for them. They weren't even they didn't have the cognitive wherewithal to even be aware of what you were doing to thank you later. Just like God's doing for you every day. Hundreds and thousands of breaths you've drawn in the last 24 hours that He gave you as a gift. Your heart has beat thousands and thousands of times in the last 24 hours, all of which He gave everyone. So many ways God's been gracious. And if you're like me, you're prone to think, man, I got a raw deal this year. I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, I look at my life and how many ways God just ridiculously blessed us. And if I'm not careful, my default position can be like, yeah, my life's pretty tough. Really? Grow up, Josh. Look at your life. And so I have to stop. And for my own perspective and heart's and soul's sake, I got to ask the question, okay, what happened again in 2016? And then how was God good and kind to me? And I start making a list, and the list starts getting longer and longer and longer. And all of a sudden, I'm worshiping, not because all of a sudden God became good, but because I finally took time to see God's goodness. And so it's good for the heart, and it's good for the soul to stop and go, how is God good to me in 2016? Because what you're prone to think is God was mean to you. God forgot you. God overlooked you. Really? I just challenge you. I would encourage you to ask the Lord to show you how he was kind to you and give you a kind of holy awareness, a holy lucidness that you might not even have the capacity to get right now. But he would just grant it to you to see how good and kind God was to you. It will cultivate humility and worship and gratefulness and thanksgiving and perspective and hope and faith. Question number 3, what have I learned? What have I learned? I oftentimes say, don't buy the movie ticket and stand out in the lobby. If you're going to spend the money, you might as well see the movie. If you're going to live life, might as well learn something from it. And so ask yourself the question, what have I learned? It's amazing to me how many times I can have the experience and miss the meaning, which means the experience was largely lost on me in terms of significance and importance. And so I want to regularly be asking myself, what am I learning here? What am I learning? Because I believe as a good Heavenly Father, he's always wanted to teach me things about himself and myself and the world around me. But oftentimes I don't have eyes to see because I'm too busy worrying about something else or not paying attention. And I just want to exhort you to ask yourself, what have I learned? Because only the fool has the same experience and never learns anything. It's the wise woman, it's the wise man who's going through life, having experiences, and then making time. Because you got to make time, because Netflix will rob this time from you, and social media will rob this time from you, and your smartphone will rob this time from you. The enemy has all sorts of tools to get you distracted and busy and living on the surface of life. Unless you stop and make time to kick those things away, unplug those things, be done with those things, step away, and just in the quietness and stillness of an early morning or a late night, stop and go, okay, God, what am I learning here? What am I learning here? Because my working presupposition is God's wanting to teach me things, and I have things to learn. So what am I learning? If I'm not learning anything, it's not because he stopped teaching. It's because I've stopped asking the question. And so what happened in 2016? How was God kind to me and gracious to me? And what have I learned? And then lastly, he asks the question, who should I thank? You should be writing these down. And if you can't read them up top there, or, oh, Rick, I'm standing your way over here, I will send this out in our weekly newsletter called The Loop. You just go to our app, which you should have on your phone, and you go to Connect, and you go to the bottom of Connect and hit the loop. And you click the loop, and you put your email in, and you'll get an email from me, a couple of emails from me a week. And one of the emails I'll send you this week is all these questions, and then all the follow-up questions I ask underneath these questions will help you work through this process for yourself. But you ask the question, well, who should I thank? Paul in Romans gives an exhortation at the end of his book. He says, outdo one another in showing honor to each other. Because it's good for the heart and the soul to cultivate honor by giving thanks to other people. Because one of the primary ways God was gracious to you and kind to you in 2016 was probably through other people around you. And so we do this every year with our family. We do this every year personally. Is how has God blessed us this year? What are we learning? And who do we need to thank? And obviously, you can't thank everyone in your life. Some maybe are dead and gone, or some are they've moved on. You can't get a hold of them. And for us, in our situation, there's just more than we could count. But you can find a few people to be intentional to thank. And so make a list. And then send them a text or write them a note or send them an email. Or better yet, pick up a phone or drive over and take them out for lunch. And say, hey, you wouldn't know this, and so I wanted to just tell you how much you have encouraged me this year. Oh, really? No. Seriously. When you said this thing or did that thing or dropped this thing off or called and asked if you could help or swung by here, I know it wasn't a big deal to you, but it was a huge deal to us. Because here was what was going on in my life earlier that day, earlier that week. And when you called and said this or helped me, offered to pray for me there, or when you did this, I knew it was sacrifice for you. It cost you time. It cost you money. It cost you effort. Or maybe it didn't cost you anything at all. It wasn't a big deal to you. It was a big deal to me. And I just wanted to say thanks. I wanted to honor God by thanking you for allowing him to use you to bless me. Have you said that to someone lately? If you haven't, you're behind. Because God has been using all sorts of people around you to love you, bless you, encourage you, build you up. And one of the ways your soul stays in perspective is you thank them. And you say, I'm not here to give you people always say it to me, I don't want to give you a big head, Pastor, but that sermon really helped. I'm like, trust me. I'm like, people think I struggle with a big head. Well, no, people think I could be tempted, and I'm on my side of the fence, I'm going, all I see is how many ways I just blow it all the time. Like a big head, are you kidding me? Sometimes all I do to get myself out of bed to show up here on a Sunday morning. Oh, Lord, what am I going to say? I got nothing to say. I'm a loser. And so one of the ways I cultivate gratitude, thanksgiving, humility, as I ask the Lord to show me, who should I thank? And then what you begin to see is like, oh my goodness, I'm not a self-made man. I didn't get here on my own. There was an army of people holding my hand along the trail. People are like, well, look what you've accomplished. Are you kidding me? Look at the army of people behind me God gave me. And begin realizing that you're not nearly the self-made woman you thought you were. That there have been people in your life that God has placed there to encourage, to invest, to build up, to counsel, and you should thank them. It'd be good for you. It'd be good for you. So 4 questions to help you look back on 2016, or further if you want. 5 questions to help you look forward. Question number 1, what am I responsible for? Now we're going to get specific. I will give you generic questions. You in your mind and heart, you put specifics to them. What am I responsible for? One of the reasons you are so stressed and you are so tired and you are so weary and you are so busy, it's because you are carrying rocks that don't have your name on them. Now, there are some rocks that have your name on them that you're not carrying that you need to go pick up. But you need to look at your backpack and say, what is in here that doesn't have my name on it? And then you need to dump it. Because it is so easy to get busy with stuff that, quite frankly, we're not necessarily responsible for. We will be held accountable before God for things he's given us responsibility for. Therefore, you should be spending your time on those things. So you ask yourself the question, what am I responsible for? And what I go through my roles. So I go through my role as a son. I'm a son of God. I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And then I'm a husband to Sharon. And I'm a father to Ella May and to Levi Gregory and to Amelia Claire and to Gideon Joshua. And then I'm a pastor at Grace City Church. And that's the priority I put them in. But I don't get to live life like, okay, once I've perfected being a follower of Jesus, then I'll be a husband. And once I've perfected being a husband, then I'll be a great father. And once I've perfected being a father, then I'll show up and be a pastor. No, I'm doing all of them simultaneously. But there is a priority order to them. In that I personally feel convicted that I have primary responsibility first to my Savior Jesus Christ and then my wife, my children, before any of you. Because if I ignore them for the sake of serving you, then I'm disqualifying myself to be of any value to you in serving you. And yet I can't say, well, I'd love to serve you, but I really need to take care of my family for the next 4 years, so I'm going to ask the church to give me a decade-long sabbatical, and I'll come back when I perfected my husbandry. I can't do that either. They're all happening at once, right? But there has to be an internal set of priorities. Otherwise, if my things I'm responsible for get out of hand, this is one of the primary reasons that we stepped back from Acts 29 last year. Is loved Acts 29, loved the guys there, loved the regional leadership we had in the Northwest, and the plan we were building, and the thing we had going on the West Coast, and the leadership opportunities God was giving us and me and traveling. But it got to be where it's like, goodness sakes, I'm building a home. I got 4 kids under 11. I got a wife with a heart issue. I got a growing church family. Why am I going to Dallas 4 times again last year? This is crazy. And it got to the point where like that rock doesn't have my name on it anymore. Good rock, great rock, heavy rock. If it's got my name on it, then I'm going to carry it by God's grace. But if it's not got my name on it, I need to put that thing down because I'm carrying that rock at the expense of carrying others. And the analogy breaks down because it makes responsibilities sound like a burden. And they're not. They're a privilege, right? They're a privilege to carry those responsibilities. That you need to ask yourself, what am I responsible for? And you work with the roles God's given you. And then you answer that question, because if you don't answer that question, what you'll find is you might be giving time or energy to things that you're not primarily responsible for. And one of the things the Lord convicted me of was I was giving primary energy to things I was not primarily responsible for. And I was giving secondary and leftover energy to things that I was primarily responsible for, which is not a good combination. So I need to make some changes, which the men in my life helped me see. I didn't get there on my own. I'm not that smart. Second question you ask, how am I doing? This is the assessment question. How am I doing? And some of you guys skip this question because, this is the hard question. I might hear things I don't want to hear. Hey, look, you're going to give an account before Jesus. Might as well ask some folks down here who you're not going to give an account to how you're doing. I just do not understand why more men and women do not invite more feedback in their life. And my guess is because it's of deep-held insecurities. My value and worth is tied up in what I do and how I accomplish my roles. Therefore, I can never be seen as a failure. Therefore, I will never ask anybody how I'm doing for fear they might think I'm a failure. But when your identity is rooted in Jesus and the finished work of Christ on the cross, I'm a son of God. I'm a daughter of God. I got the last name of the Father. Nothing can change that. And there's a deep-seated sense of confidence. Then you're free to ask people, how am I doing? Because your status with Jesus isn't going to rise or fall based on what they say or don't say. And so if you're unwilling to ask someone how you're doing in your finances, or how you're doing as a husband or a wife, or a father or mother, if you're unwilling to ask someone how your parenting skills are, ask yourself why. You want to tick someone off, you give them a little parenting tip. Hey, I noticed you're... Well, really? It's like the sacred cow we just spit on. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I know that because I feel that way. Every once in a while, mom or dad, super gracious, very kind. Once every 3 years, hey, Josh, notice something. Notice what? Well, you weren't perfect either, Dad. I mean, whatever. It's like, come on, relax. I love my dad. He loves me. He's for me. Why would I not pursue him? So, in fact, Sharon and I regularly go to my mom and dad. I don't think they're here. Are they here, mom and dad here? No? We go to mom and dad and say, how are we doing? You seen anything? Because Sharon and I are very aware of our shortcomings, and we're very aware of our blind spots. Not that we see them, but we know they're there. And so we ask, how are we doing? What's going on? Kids, have you asked your parents recently how you're doing? If not, you're missing out. You're 16 or 17 and think you know everything. Guess what? You don't even know how much you don't know. You're more stupid than you think. Just loving you here, okay? Just helping you out. If you haven't asked your parents questions recently about how you're doing, you're missing out. Your parents have wisdom and experience, and they're further down the trail that you're on. You can ask them, hey, what's coming up? How should I prepare for it? And so ask, how you're doing. And you can grade yourself on how you're doing as a husband and a follower of Jesus and as a father or mother and as a pastor or whatever thing you do, but you're not the final judge of how you're doing. Because one of the things will happen. You either judge yourself too harshly and ignore the wonderful progress by God's grace you're making, or you'll judge yourself too easy. Doing pretty good if I do say so myself. That's the problem. You're saying so yourself. And so husbands, you don't get to give yourself the grade on how you're doing as a husband. Who gets to give you the grade? Your wife. Chris is the only one who wrote that down and he's not married. Come on. You need to go ask your spouse, hey babe, how am I doing? And don't take, fine. Press, ask questions. No. Do you feel loved? Do you feel secure? Do you feel nurtured? Do you feel thought of? Do you feel cared for? Do I make you feel loved? Well, yeah, I guess so. Really? In what ways? Can she be specific? Can she give you examples? Come on, guys. Let's go. Pursue questions. Ask your kids, how am I doing? Doing great, Dad. Really? Ask questions. Ask for feedback. You got nothing to lose, right? You're going to stand before Jesus and give an account. Might as well get some feedback on the way there. If you're like me, you have men in your life that'll give you feedback whether you like it or not, which is really helpful. Like the guy in the front row over here. I know for a fact because I've pre-approved permission for him to, hey, just for the record, if I get to a place where I'm so dumb, I'm not asking for help, you have my permission to smack me upside the head. And then when he comes and smacks me, I'm like, hey, what? He said, you told me to. And I'm like, okay. Deep breath. Why did you do that again? And then we talk, right? Because I realize in moments of holy lucidness, I'm not even smart enough to ask for help when I need it. So before I get into the moment, I need to just give 4 people I trust permission to pop me in the face if I need it, and I'm not asking for it. And then there's people like my mom that do it whether I ask for it or not. I got Adam, I got my brother Kerry, my mom and dad, my father primarily. Pastor Kent, Pastor Chris, these are men that I love. Brian Howard, these are men that invest in my life because I got to regularly ask, how am I doing? Otherwise, I'll paint an inaccurate picture of myself. Either it's too rosy or it's doom and gloom. When the reality of it is, I bet the feedback you'll get will be much better than you think. There's going to be lots of encouraging things you're doing that you don't even realize. So ask how we're doing. Number 3, what 3 things do I need to stop doing? And I'm not talking here I need to stop using porn and stop getting drunk and stop robbing convenience stores, okay? Duh, you know what I mean? It's like okay, good for you. I'm talking about like good things that are enemies of the best things. And this might be social media, this might be Netflix. I'm not to hammer on those things, but those things can suddenly rob a lot of your time. And all of a sudden you're not present, you're not there. If your phone's out on the counter, it's like, come on. Maybe it's a hobby. It's a great hobby, a ton of fun, but you're spending more time on your hobby than your kids. Okay, either bring them along with you in your hobby or stop the hobby, because if you got kids under 16, your hobby should be your kids. Right? It's amazing. I watch how many dads just run off and do their thing, and this happens often. A dad has a passion to do something, and their kids grow up and never do it. Why? They never got invited along. Dads, if you got a passion for something and you invite your kids, they don't want to come, guess what? Don't go. Find something they're passionate about. You will not have them for very long. While you have them, invest. I'm not saying build your life around your kids, because the most important thing a parent can do is get a meaningful life and invite their kid to join them in that. So you get what I'm saying, right? But don't just run off and do your thing, because maybe your thing might not be your kid's thing, and that's okay. Well, my dad was a genius at, I think, is tapping into my brothers and my motivations. Knowing what motivated us and our unique personalities and our unique gifting and wiring, and then finding ways to get involved with us in those things. That's genius parenting. So ask yourself the questions, what 3 things do I need to stop doing? And it might be 10 things. It might be 100 things. Let's just be realistic this year and start with 3. We'll get to the Air 97 in 2018, okay? But I guarantee you, everyone in this room has at least 3 things they should stop doing that are robbing time and emotional energy from things they should be doing. Which leads to the next question, of course. What 3 things do I need to start doing? And here's what I'll do. I'll ask these questions in every sphere of my life. So what 3 things should I stop doing as a follower of Jesus, as a husband to Sharon, as a father to my 4 precious children, as a pastor of Grace City Church? So I'll walk through my personal and my professional life, and I'll ask, what 3 things just need to go? And I'll ask these questions quarterly. And it's super helpful because all of us have a plate, and we can only fit so much on that plate. And before you add something good to that plate, you need to take something off that plate, because I'm guaranteeing you, in the dynamic life we live and the way things change, there are things in your plate that shouldn't be there. And so to get room for things that should be there that currently aren't there, you need to take the things that are there and take them off there, so you can take the things that aren't there and put them on there. So you take them off, and then you go, okay, now it needs to go on. Now you got room to put those things back on the plate that have your name on them. And so I'll do this personally and professionally all the way through my life. I'm going to walk our staff through this exercise on Tuesday. And they're going to get 2 weeks to walk through these questions and consider these questions both personally and professionally, so that we can live more effective, efficient, responsible, intentional, purposeful, meaningful lives. Why? Because life's short. Jesus is in control. Make plans and then do what matters. And then the last question I ask myself is, what regret am I unwilling to live with? What regret am I unwilling to live with? And this is where we reverse engineer our life. We look to these pictures These people who've done great things and horrible things, and some amazing things and some simple things, and we've known them, we've enjoyed them, we've been entertained by them, and now they're gone. And the question I always ask is, what regrets did they have, I wonder? Because outside publicly we see, wow, look, they made that movie, they did that, and you find out personally that their lives were just a wreck. I don't want to have public success and be a private train wreck. I could care less about public success. I want to be respected most by those who know me best in my private world. And the public thing will take care of itself. And so I ask this question every year, what regrets am I willing to live with? And mine don't change from year to year, but I write them out anyway, so they're there. And I don't have them with me here, so I'll off the top of my head, but one of my regrets I'm unwilling to live with is I am unwilling to have my wife's life be wasted because she married me. I'm unwilling to have the most beautiful, competent, extraordinary woman I have ever met in my life, to have her life be wasted because she hitched her wagon to mine. Meaning I'm going to love and pursue her in ways I wouldn't if that wasn't a regret I didn't want to have. One of the regrets I'm unwilling to live with is for my children to grow up being bored, directionless, and live a life with no vision or substance or significance because they were born into my household. I am shocked to see how many quote-unquote Christian parents let their kids drift and wander into meaningless lives because they thought the extent of their responsibility was to keep them warm and well-fed. Wrong. Your responsibility was to love and shepherd and nurture them and nurture their calling and nurture their personality and nurture their unique gifting and give them a vision for how they could spend their life doing meaningful things that matter. And they can reject it and flip you off and blow you off and do their own thing because they're a fool. That's on them. But what will be on you is, did you pursue them, shepherd them, nurture them, know them, ask them questions, unpack their heart, challenge them, give them visions? Were you working to help launch them into a life of significance, or were you like, hey, they got a cell phone, I bought them a car, I'm paying for their education at school, my work here is finished? That's foolish parenting. And so what regrets are you unwilling to live with when you come to your last day? Because nobody sits on their deathbed and goes, would you please bring me my resume so I can read through it one last time? Would you please bring me my trophies so I can kiss them each before I go? You won't regret your resume or your trophies, but you might regret relationships that you didn't invest in, that you maybe should have. So I'm just encouraging you as a church family to take this moment, this unique moment in our very busy lives at the new year, and to stop and ask some questions, help you look back, and ask some questions, help you look forward. Because I'm praying that individually and collectively, that this year will be the most significant year in your life individually and in our life collectively as a church, as we dare to dream audacious goals and make audacious plans that could only be accomplished if Jesus showed up. I don't want to make plans and set goals that I can accomplish on my own. Boring. I want to set goals and I want to make plans that could only happen if a radical miracle took place and Jesus showed up and put his shoulder behind the plow I'm envisioning. That's the kind of life I want to live, and that's the kind of life you're invited into through Jesus Christ. So I'm encouraging you, church, don't be so spiritual that you're not practical. Ask good questions. Ask good questions. Make big plans. In light of life being short, in light of the truth that Jesus is reigning, be humbled by that, be comforted by that, and then make plans by identifying your primary responsibilities so that you do what matters most with your life this year.